Yeah, so thank you so much, Robin, for agreeing to be part of this conversation. Why I decided to have this conversation with Robin was because he's doing quite an important thing for the healthcare industry, and not just the healthcare industry in Africa, but I think it's global, yeah, because this is an international health forum. So thank you, Robin, for giving me the honors to be one of my guests for this topic, healthcare. That's the series we've been doing in March. So maybe you can introduce yourself. You can tell us who you are, a little bit about yourself on your the personal side, and also on the professional side, exactly what you do, and then we can go. We can continue from there.
Okay. Well, listen, Rahel, thanks very much for hosting me on your podcast. I'm very honored, pleased. To talk about, I suppose, my background first. I've been 31 years in the insurance business. Started off in the UK, working for large blue chip companies. Mm-hmm. First of all, on sort of the investment and pension side of business, and then gradually moved across through various business lines and ended up focusing on health insurance. That was where I was at when I came out to Dubai, which is where I'm actually based. I came to Dubai 16 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And I've been working for insurance companies. I also worked for Ernst & Young, the global advisory services firm, as a consultant with them. I worked for Dubai government, and I was one of the guys that established and developed the health insurance scheme for the government of Dubai. Mm-hmm. And shortly after that, I then set up my own consultancy business, which is called the Consilient Consultancy. Mm-hmm. So that's my professional background. The International Health Insurance Forum is actually a brand of the Consilient Consultancy. So it's not a separate company. It's something I run as part of Consilient. Mm-hmm. How did it start? Where did it start?
But maybe before that, before you tell us where it started and how you started, I just want to still get to know you a little bit more in terms of your personal side. So how do you unwind? What does Robin do? Like, what do you do for fun? Because I'm sure you work hard, but you play harder, I hope. Yeah.
Yeah. So I spend a lot of my time working, and then for fun, I work.
That's too serious, Robin. You need to have something else fun to do, yeah? Do you travel a lot?
So I do try and travel as much as possible. But again, that's mainly on business. But I try and combine it with a little bit of sightseeing as well. Yeah. I suppose on the fun side, I've got 2 cats, which keep me busy. Yeah. And obviously there's lots of options in a place like Dubai to get out and about. Yeah. That's pretty much my life.
So let me ask.
I also enjoy cooking and
nice.
I have to eat.
That's good. Yeah, you have to eat to live. Yeah. So why cats? Why not dogs or any other pet? Why cats? Why particularly?
I live in an apartment, and it's easier to have. And actually, I didn't go out looking for the cats; they found me. They're both stray cats, and they just one turned up, and then a year later, another one turned up. Yeah. So they keep me busy, especially when I'm on calls. They seem to know exactly when I'm on a call, and that's when they decide to start bouncing around the place.
Yeah, that's interesting. And are you a dad? Are you a husband? Do you have family? Yeah.
So being quite an old guy now, and I was also a late baby. My parents died many years ago, as did my only brother. So yes, I'm married. My wife is Irish, and she spends most of her time in Ireland. Okay. She just finds that the heat in Dubai just too much to bear. But she's actually here at the moment. It's a nice time of year here. It's about 30 degrees, sunny, a bit of a breeze. So she's here. She's actually my co-director of the consultancy business.
Okay.
The business is actually established in Ireland. Mm-hmm. Originally, I set the business up in Dubai. But then for various reasons decided to move it to Ireland. She's my co-director. So she runs the operations side of things from there.
Oh, nice. Nice. I hope she makes you have a little bit of fun, like not too serious, not working all the time. So I hope she just pushes you out of the door and tells you, let's go for a walk, let's go out and just do something for fun. I hope she balances that side of your life. Yeah.
She has been doing that, yes. And the last few days she has been doing that.
That's really great. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So just to get into the conversation and about the International Health Event Forum, yeah? So when did you start it and why did you start it?
Okay, so back in 2016, I was invited to speak at a health insurance conference in Amsterdam. And then in 2017, I was invited to speak at similar conferences in Prague, in Czechia, and also in Vienna, in Austria. And what I noticed compared to the health insurance conferences that were happening in the Middle East, that these events were of a very different format. They were smaller in terms of the audience, but the quality of the audience was far better. More C-suite executives, general managers of companies, and I think the value that those events, that format of event provided was clearly much better than the large events that were being held in the Middle East. For instance, in one year alone, there were 6 health insurance conferences in Dubai alone. Everyone was piling into the market. There were conference event organizers coming from Europe, from Eastern Europe, from India, from all over. And they were simply repeating the same format of having as many delegates as possible to drive ticket sales, because these are all commercial organizations. And they would get speakers along who perhaps weren't particularly good, and they'd always be the same speakers year after year. They'd be saying the same things. The branding was also wrong, because they'd always brand these as Middle East and North Africa events or Middle East events. Yet, in effect, almost all the delegates and almost all the speakers were from Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, maybe a few from Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. But there was nothing North African about these events, and nothing wider Middle East in terms of countries such as Jordan, Lebanon, etc. So I decided to see whether this format, this European format, would work here. And I actually met at one of the events, I think it was in Vienna, I met the CEO of Nationwide Medical Insurance from Ghana, Nancy Ampar, and also a couple of other people. And I invited them along to the first event, which we held in September 2018 in Dubai. And we branded that a Middle East and Africa event, because I'd had conversations with Nancy and a few of the others, people from Kenya. And they said, well, we don't have anything like this here. And I said, well, look, if you'd like to be part, then come along. So they came along, they spoke. We had about 20% of the delegates at that first event actually came from sub-Saharan African countries. And what they all said to me at the end of it was, why can't you come and do this in Africa? And I said, well, there's no reason why I can't come and do it in Africa, and I'd love to. So that led to us the following spring in 2019. We ran our first East Africa event in Nairobi. Then we came back to the Middle East and ran our next Middle East event in Bahrain in September 2019. And then everything stopped. 2020, COVID arrived, and we just couldn't put on any in-person events. That eased, and then thankfully last year in October we were able to organize our first West Africa event, and we held that in Accra. And that was followed in November by our event in Nairobi. So we had a second East Africa event. So now we're into 2021, and we're organizing our events for this year. So we have the East Africa event coming up, which we're holding in Rwanda this year. We like to rotate the event around the region, not just have it in one country year after year, to extend access.
Yeah.
And then in June, we're running our first event for Southern Africa. So that will be in Johannesburg. Then in September, we're running an event in Southeast Asia, which will probably be Kuala Lumpur, followed by a Middle East event again in Bahrain. And then in November, we'll be going to Lagos for our West Africa event.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that.
That's interesting.
So that's the history of the events.
Yeah. Wow. You do quite a lot. And maybe let me ask, why are you doing this? What's the objective? What are you aiming to achieve from all these events and from inviting all these healthcare stakeholders to be part of this event? What is your objective?
So the original objective was really to just introduce this different format to health insurance events. But then when I started running them in African countries, and I became more and more involved in my professional life with universal health coverage, and I very quickly became passionate about supporting the drive towards UN SDG 3.8, which is basically having healthcare access for all throughout the world. So I never set out to make any money out of these events. It was more an altruistic venture, just to sort of bring people together from different sectors in the health financing ecosystem. And by that, I'm talking about not only governments who finance healthcare, I'm talking about private health insurance companies that are sources of finance. I include within that ecosystem healthcare providers. It's very important that they work more closely with insurance companies and other payers of the insurance, such as governments. It includes pharmaceutical companies. It includes telecommunication companies, such as, for example, Safaricom is speaking in Kigali. It includes banks and finance companies, technology firms, companies that can provide the technology to actually run the systems. So it sort of brings everyone together to discuss the common aim, which is, to bring healthcare access to everyone, but also to try and smooth out some of the differences that they may have. And as I say, that's particularly the case between payers of insurance and providers of insurance. There are often misunderstandings about what the objectives are. There are often inefficient systems of communication between the two sides, which leads to providers having to wait a long time for their money, insurance companies saying, well, no, we're not going to pay because this wasn't a real claim or whatever. So just making sure that with the help of technology and other systems, we can get these different players in the system working together far more efficiently.
That's really great. And maybe let me ask, have you ever had, or has someone shared with you any impactful story from this events, because you've been running them for quite a while now? So have you had anything from any of the partners, any of the sponsors, any of the delegates that they've taken something out of this event and they've implemented and it has been successful, or it's on the way to being successful? Have you had any impactful story that you can share?
Yeah, I think one of the stories is about a healthcare provider that simply said, we didn't really understand the insurance business, and by attending this conference we now understand why insurance companies do what they do and say what they say, and why we think sometimes that we just don't get along, and it's because they've been working in silos. So that's one benefit. Another benefit was one of the sponsors of the event in Nairobi last year, wrote to me and said that just by being at the event, they picked up so many potential contacts, business contacts as well as just networking contacts, which has helped them broaden their reach. And for a number of companies, that are looking to expand their presence within regions.
Mm-hmm.
This has proved to be, you know, a good way of doing so.
Yeah.
Because they get to meet potential clients that they
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't otherwise have met,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes not even known about. So it's really, apart from the general goal of trying to advance universal healthcare, it's also another objective of the event is simply networking, as well as everyone having fun.
Yeah.
And you know, if you look at some of the photographs on our website in our gallery, there are a lot of smiling faces there.
Yeah.
People do enjoy the event. Actually, apart from just the 2 days, we also begin the night before with an informal evening reception.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone can attend that, if it's a sponsor, a speaker, or a delegate. And they come along, we just have some food, some drinks, convivial atmosphere, normally sort of on a terrace outdoors. And people get to know each other before the next morning. So when they come to register for the event in the morning, most of them already know each other if they haven't, hadn't met before.
Yeah.
And that just helps proceedings, helps people get along.
Yeah. That's really great, and it's good to hear. And maybe to share my own personal story, because obviously this is thanks to you and for doing what you're doing. I met Nancy Ampa, who's become a great friend, and she's connected me to different stakeholders in the Ghana market. So, I mean, your event is actually doing something for a lot of people, and the stories that you've just shared is a testament to what this event can actually do for not just sponsors, for partners, and for delegates, because the networking part is obviously a very important part in this particular industry. Because you said earlier, the healthcare industry is a bit fragmented. People are in silos, or organizations are in silos. So I think bringing all these people together is actually quite a great thing. And I'm hoping that more and more people will attend this conversation and will attend this forum, so that they get to learn more about the insurance companies, their providers, the technological providers, and many other stakeholders that either enable the improvement of accessibility to healthcare or affordability to healthcare. So it's quite wide, and obviously I'll share the details of the event somewhere either at the end or in between, and hopefully more people will actually join and come and be part of this conversation, because I'm sure you'd want to hear from different stakeholders, even the ones that maybe we are not thinking about, you are not thinking about, and maybe they'll add a little bit more value to this event, because what your objective is, and what I heard you saying is you want this event to be valuable. Yeah. And for impact is the most important thing. Impact for universal healthcare coverage. And I think, for Africa, and you can attest to this, for Africa, in terms of accessibility, the numbers are very low. So, I mean, if we have such events and then we have more implementers and people who can influence this implementation, I think this conversation will go beyond just a conversation, and it will actually be more impactful. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So you raise a couple of important points there. The first is that at many events, people attend, they listen, they participate, they discuss, and they leave. And nothing changes, nothing happens, there's no action. So the panel sessions that we run throughout the course of the 2 days, we normally have 3 or 4 panel sessions. They generally are titled around the using the words of what can we do, what are the initiatives that can be taken to do something on a particular matter. So the panel sessions are there to really encourage not only the panelist members, but also the audience to think about initiatives. And then what we do is we make a list of those initiatives and then take those initiatives to various bodies. So it might be a medical association, it might be an insurance association, it might be government, it might be the Ministry of Health, and say, look, these are some initiatives which collectively all those involved in the health insurance, health financing ecosystem suggest that you should consider. So we try and make sure that there are these lists of initiatives which come out of the event, which locals can then take forward and hopefully produce some impactful outcomes from them. The second point you mentioned about accessibility. Normally somewhere in our events for Africa, we have the terms accessibility, affordability, and sustainability. Because those are the three essentials to try and extend the reach of healthcare to people in many African countries. Where people get confused is between health coverage and healthcare. So the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal that I mentioned earlier, 3.8, talks about ensuring that by 2030, everyone has sufficient healthcare, universal healthcare coverage. But covering someone for healthcare doesn't mean they have access to healthcare.
Exactly.
So you can have a system, for example, in Rwanda, where 85%, I believe, of the people are now covered under the community-based health insurance scheme, and the rest are covered under sort of formal employer schemes or civil service schemes or armed forces schemes. But if those people are living in rural areas and don't have access to healthcare, then the fact they've got universal health coverage is meaningless to them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's why, for example, in some African countries, particularly East Africa, that was the birthplace of telemedicine. It wasn't in Europe. It wasn't in the Middle East. The Middle East only introduced telemedicine about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's 15 or 16 years it's been around in Africa. Dr. Charles Komoto of Dakar, Africa, in Kenya, he started his business 16, 17 years ago. And it was out of necessity, not out of convenience. Telemedicine in some more developed countries has developed more recently because it's convenient. People don't have to take a day off work to go to the hospital, the doctor. So, telemedicine has been a great asset to a lot of people in rural Africa. Couple that with the increased access to mobile phones, then you've got a combination of technologies that can enable people to get diagnoses wherever they are, without having to do a 20-kilometer trek to the nearest health post or health hut. So, that I always want to make that clear to people, that achieving universal health coverage is one thing, but access
is a different thing.
Access is important.
Definitely. And I totally agree with you. And you've talked about telemedicine. So just allow me to ask you this one question. I mean, you've talked about Dr. Charles Kamoto, who's running a telemedicine service. Why do you think the uptake is quite low? Because, I mean, this is a necessity. And if it's, how do I put it? If it's implemented in the right way, with obviously the resources that are required for, let's say, the low income group and also the middle income group, then the uptake can be a little bit higher. But why do you think, in your opinion, for telemedicine, the uptake is not that high?
Okay, let's again make a distinction between some terminology. So a lot of people talk about telemedicine, talk about telehealth. Telehealth, if you like, is the overarching concept. And within telehealth, you have different things. You have diagnosis, teleconsultation. You also have telemedicine. You have prescribing medications. And then you also, at the ultimate end of telemedicine, is where you have a surgeon sitting in Paris or London, directing a surgeon in Nairobi on how to operate on someone, doing it via video. That's the ultimate. Okay. And telemedicine at the moment is not that prevalent. If we're talking about actual operations being performed with the assistance of some surgeon, a specialist in a remote place in a different country. That's not happening so much. Now, teleconsultation is happening a lot more. And that really is the first step. If you're in a rural district and your baby's coughing all night long, if without a teleconsultation facility, then you're going to have to take that baby maybe on quite a long journey to get them to see a doctor or a nurse, who will then just maybe tell them, baby's fine, just keep it warm, keep it wrapped up, or just give it plenty of water and go home. That can be done over the telephone, over the use of mobile phones. And I think what it needs is a community-based approach whereby there is some sort of go-to person within a village who has a mobile phone, which has access to nurses or doctors or pharmacists in major cities, in urban areas. And that people in the village can go to that person and say, can you set up a call and let's talk to a doctor over the phone. And they may just be able to say to us, this is diagnosis from what you can see, from what you're telling us. No need for you to go to a hospital, go to a health clinic. Just take care of the baby, doing these certain things, and then it's fine. But then again, if on that telephone, that teleconsultation, the doctor suspects or the nurse suspects that there is a problem, then they'll need to go to a clinic. So it's sort of a step-by-step approach, this whole telehealth thing. And I think we need to understand what each of the components of the broader concept of telehealth are. As I mentioned, you've got prescriptions over the telephone, you've got consultations over the telephone, and then at the other end of the scale, you've actually got people, surgeons advising each other between different countries on how to perform an operation.
And I'm really glad you mentioned that, because here in Kenya, I'll talk about Kenya, we put telemedicine, or rather we take telemedicine as one thing. So it's not telehealth. So when someone hears telemedicine, then they bundle all these things together. So I'm glad that you've given us that distinction. So I'm hoping for the listeners who will obviously watch this, they will actually hear and see the distinction between all these services that can be provided under telehealth. And obviously they will reach out to stakeholders or to providers that offer these services and hopefully partner with them or get some points of synergy, so that, we just continue building this whole ecosystem where healthcare is accessible and affordable, because that's the main aim. And that's why you're doing what you're doing, Yeah. So maybe you can tell us, as we come to a close, maybe you can tell us who needs to come for this event, who needs to come for this forum.
Okay, so clearly anybody that works in the private health insurance industry come. Anyone that works in government-funded schemes such as the NHIF or CBHI in Rwanda. Anyone who is working at a healthcare provider who is involved in the revenue cycle management side of things. By revenue cycle management, we talk about the person or people within the hospital or clinic who are responsible for making sure that all the services that they deliver are paid for. So they have a lot of communication with payers of insurance, and that could be government payers, or it could be private health insurance payers. So they would also benefit from coming along. From the technology perspective, definitely technology firms will benefit, because they'll be able to identify where their technologies can assist in improving the efficiencies of the system of payment between healthcare providers and healthcare payers. Also, insure tech companies. So those are the companies that develop specific technologies for insurance. There are others. There are, for example, finance companies. So those behind things like M-Pesa. because a lot of accessibility to health insurance now is driven through people being able to subscribe using their mobile phone payment services. And that's one reason why we have Safaricom coming to talk to us in Kigali as being a major investor in M-Pesa. Also pharmaceutical companies, they will benefit from attending because they'll get to understand more about the difficulties that people have in being able to afford medicines. Really, it's a whole range of people, as I say, that are involved in the health financing ecosystem.
That's great. And I'm glad that you've shared all this with us. And I'm looking forward to obviously coming to the event. And hopefully we'll have more delegates and we'll have more people sharing their insights and how we can improve this healthcare ecosystem. So thank you for being here with us, Robin. I really appreciate it. And looking forward to meeting you again in Rwanda. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Rahel. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.